Good afternoon, everyone. I thought I'd add another video to YouTube with regard to my project car here, a 1999 Honda Accord EX two-door with the V6 engine. I really wasn't having a problem as it was a quirk, but I noticed that when the fuel gauge got down to empty, the low fuel indicator did not come on. It's usually a little yellow indicator to let you know that you have a couple of gallons of gas left in the car. I noticed that it did not come on. So I decided to go ahead and run it down just as far as I could and see if it came on. Now, what I didn't do is pay attention as to how much fuel I put in it when I filled it up the last time. So with a little research, I found out the tank holds 17.2 gallons. The low fuel indicator light should come on within 2 gallons. So anything 2 gallons or less, that little yellow light came on. And I got to thinking, well, this is not a major issue for me, just fill it up at a quarter tank, but it's just kind of a project, and this little simple diagnostic technique I'm going to use saves you from having to pull a lot of components apart. It will narrow things down, and it's very simple with minimal tools. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where the indicator light is on the inside of the car. Okay, here's where I do things one-handed again. Now, if you look, the indicator light should be right there, just to the left of the little automobile. The little automobile is the door ajar. To the right should be the seat belt. Now, if you notice on the startup sequence, you get several lights, such as the brake, the seat belt, door ajar, park. All of those are part of the startup sequence. After doing a little research, I found out that the low fuel indicator is not a part of that. So I got to thinking, what could possibly go wrong with this? Well, I've replaced a lot of bulbs in this cluster, one of them being the odometer. Little bulbs burned out. Hey, it's a 1999. It does have a little age on it. So I figured it could be a bulb, it could be the wiring, it could be the connector back at the fuel pump, or it could be just, like I said, a little corrosion. I've had that happen, just a little bit of corrosion on terminals. So I figured this little diagnostic test will keep you from having to pull the instrument cluster only to find out that the bulb was good. And if I'm not mistaken, it's hard to find this information, I think that this particular bulb, much like the seat light bulb, is inside the cluster. You have to pull the cluster out, which in this car is actually not too bad. You have to pull the cluster out and separate some of the pieces to get to this bulb. So before I did that, I decided I would go ahead and check back at the fuel pump to see if it actually occurs there. Now, as I've learned with this particular car, the sensor for that is built into the fuel pump. Also, this particular model too, the fuel filter is not in the engine compartment. It's built back in here in the gas tank in the rear of the car itself too. So let me show you in the rear how to get the plate off so that you can get to the connector. Now, I am looking into the trunk by pulling the left rear seat forward because it does pop down. And Honda did a good thing here. It's easy to get to the fuel pump in the assembly. All I did is I pulled the little panel that covers up the spare tire and stuff. I pulled it back, and you have this particular plate. In this plate are 3 screws. Phillips head. Easy enough. Once you move this plate over, you're going to see the fuel lines and the actual connector. Now, on the back side of the connector is where the tab is that you have to remove this connector. Okay, so over here is the tab that you have to push in right there. You have to push that in and pull this connector up. It can be difficult. It is stubborn. Then I'm going to turn it over, and you're going to see the 5-pin connector. Now, in order to check to see if the light bulb is working and the wiring harness, I mean, there could be chafing, but I've not done any work around the wiring harness. So I'm thinking it's either the sensor inside the fuel tank or it's the light bulb. So what I'm going to show you is how to jump the terminals so that you can check the light bulb. Now understand there's no power with the key out of the ignition. You're going to have power on in order to check this. So before I put the jumper in, I'm going to turn the power off, put the jumper in, and then check it. Also, I had a schematic to show me exactly which two wires I needed to jump. Obviously, one's going to be a ground. The other one is a light green wire with a red stripe. If you break something, it's not my fault. I'm giving you a disclaimer. It happens to work for this particular model. I'm not sure about any of the other models before or after this one. But I do know on this vehicle, it's going to be pin number 1 up here, that's the ground, and pin number 3, which is the light green red. Really hard to tell, or it could be the opposite. Either way, it's pin 1 and pin 3. Like I say, black is ground, light green is going to be power. So I'm going to go ahead and put the little piece of wire in here. What I usually use is bell wire. Great stuff. It's flexible, stays in there, it's small, and it can carry the current. So give me just a second to put my little jumper in. Okay, so I just double checked. My light green wire is here, my black wire is here. And here's my little jumper. Like I say, just a small piece of bell wire. I always have lots of bell wire. It's good for all kinds of projects. Now what I'm going to do is go back to the front of the car and turn the ignition so that you have power here and see if the light comes on. Okay, well let's turn the key, see what we get. Well, as you can see, the yellow light, which shows a very small gas tank, see if I can zoom in a little bit, shows me that the bulb is working. So that basically leaves two possibilities. One, that the sensor, again, which is built into the fuel pump assembly, is bad, which is most likely, or there might be a little bit of corrosion on those terminals back there. Well, like I said in another video I made, I'm a big fan of dielectric grease. The actual prongs do look good. Nothing's bent or broken or out of place. It is an area that, it could get wet. There could be corrosion. So I'm going to go ahead and put some dielectric grease on that particular connector, and I'm going to see if that just happens to make a difference. Now, just say that it is the sensor that's in the pump. You'd have to remove the pump. You'd have to have probably like $80 in parts. That part of the assembly is like the float. And that's about $80. You don't have to replace the pump itself, just that assembly. And then you have to have a new gasket to seal it at the very top. You don't want to use the old one. You definitely don't want gas fumes. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dielectric grease on. Okay, so I think I'll finish this up. I just went ahead and measured the resistance across the two terminals back there at the fuel pump and got 47 ohms. Don't know what that means, and I do have a full tank of gas. Don't know what the difference would be between full and when the light should come on. Something else I'll have to research. But that's an easy way to check to kind of eliminate some problems and not have to tear 16 pieces of your car apart to get to a bulb when you find out it's really not the bulb. So, have a good day. Hope this helps.